have our guest speaker today, Calayde Davey. And we did circulate a little bit about Calayde because, quite frankly, she's involved in so many absolutely wonderful things that I didn't put a whole lot on the agenda. But she's going to tell us about the urban strategy work that they did in the Hatfield CID. I don't know if Lucas was able to join us. He was certainly going to try. This was as a senior lecturer at Calayde, University of Pretoria. Is that correct?
Yes. Can you hear me well? In this case,
that was that cap. Okay, if you can get it up into presentation mode, then we're all very happy, and over to you.
Thank you, guys. First of all, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Can you hear me well? If there's any problems, just let me know. I'm going to cover quite a lot of ground because I'd rather you invite us back for follow-up conversations. So see this as a curiosity-evoking moment. And then please reach out for questions or let me know how it goes. So I'm going to speak from a very broad perspective, and I'd like you to think at the end how you could participate or be what interests you, and we can go from there. I'm going to start with the Hatfield Digital Twin City. It's an initiative that I run at the University of Pretoria. It's a transdisciplinary initiative. What this means is it is discipline agnostic, it's field agnostic, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're in the city, you are involved in something that is about information management at some or another level. So I'm going to start there. My job here at the university is to figure out what is a digital twin city. I'm not going to spend too much time today on that. I'm mostly going to focus on everything else. But my job is to figure out and test ideas about smartness, intelligence in cities in a very broad way. And it's not just the tech, and then figure out how we can scale and make this feasible in Africa at all the different scales, which is why the CIDs are such an important player in this space. So I'm going to have two conversations today and a very, very quick rundown what we do with the Hatfield Digital Twin City. And the second kind of conversation is how we could work with other CIDs, but I'll mostly demonstrate what we do with our CID, and maybe that will spark some interest in you. As you all know, we have to work on cities in Africa. It's the fastest growing economy, urbanism, etc. All these pressures are mounting, and they're mounting exponentially. And a lot of these problems are coming from the fact that we don't share a common reality, even though we're working on complex problems. And you are very aware that in South African cities, this is even more exacerbated as we have a very weak leadership and skills environment. We don't know how to collaborate well. We think we do, but we don't. We're very reactive as opposed to predictive. And we don't have safe places to practice together. And for these reasons is why we created the Hatfield Digital Twin City. And I'll explain to you how the urban strategy plays into that. So we said, and we realized very quickly, there can't be any intelligence, and I'm not talking smartphones and objects and machines, I'm talking intelligence in cityness and city issues, without a spatial reality that is from a shared reality, that we all see the same things, understand the same way about the city. And there can't be intelligence in our city without intelligent people. In other words, people who know how to work together and are sharing this reality in the same way. So what this means for us in practical terms, here are some of our students in the Netherlands with an exchange program, is that we need to produce a shared reality of our cityness, whether it's CIDs, precincts, buildings, or things, operational things, so we can come to common ground very quickly and then make effective decisions from the same environment. So we said, well, let's do that. Let's build smartness by developing people through urban digital twins. And a digital twin, in short, is a physical, real copy of the physical world, a real-time copy of the physical world in a digital form. So how we do this is, I'm going to not spend too much time on our lab. I'm just going to show you very quickly what this looks like and how it works. We built a laboratory, and we're always going to be developing on this laboratory. We call it the Hatfield Digital Twin City Laboratory. And this place gives us a safe space to practice a lot of urbanism in, whether it's at building, human, or other scales. Then the Urban Strategy Studio, which I'll show you some examples from, is a place where we incubate these shared skills and we work on urban challenges to figure out what to do. And then whatever is the fruit of this labor, we take to postgrad research units where we do contract research or specific topics at a much more higher level of maturity and feed this back into the lab and vice versa. So in the laboratory, we have a safe space for piloting, digital piloting, physical piloting, whatever comes around, such as the air quality, Tshwane air quality pilot that is in the works, medical campus or South Campus pilot, so that we can practice and demonstrate and learn together. And then the Urban Strategy Studio is a much more creative and transdisciplinary space where we produce challenges that we then try and act on. And I'll show you today the Hatfield Solid Waste Twin, which we did in partnership with the Netherlands, and our initiative called the African Zero Waste Cities, which I'll show you some work that we're doing with the Hatfield CID, which led to the Hatfield Zero Waste pilot. From these environments, from Urban Strategy Studios, which is a creative space where we can work together, we also take important topics further into more advanced research, and I'll show you the urban mining for circularity in the built environment unit outcomes. All right, so quickly I'm going to go through what does a twin city look like. So basically, this is Hatfield Digital Twin City. It's the only one on the African continent. The rest we could find are, as you can see, mostly global north and a little bit to the far easts. And in other words, the developed world regions. We're the only one on the continent actively building in this space. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And we hope to not be the only one. With your interest and support, we could probably scale very quickly. But long story short, the reason we're in Hatfield is because between the University of Pretoria and the Hatfield CID, we pretty much control 80% of this territory in the 25 square kilometers that we occupy. And there's all sorts of other advantages for us to work together specifically in Hatfield, including the fact that it's very robust geometry. The Gautrain is there, major national highways. It's the second largest home to the global diplomatic corps other than Washington, D.C., and the very strong and healthy partnership we have with our CID as a university and a CID. It means we can do a lot of things here because we have these very strong social capital and physical and real asset capital as well. To give you an idea, the University of Pretoria manages at least 2 billion rand in assets. We are the largest asset owner next to the city itself. And with the CID, we cover quite a lot of territory in terms of the built environment, our satellite campuses, our project spaces, our fleets of vehicles, etc. So we're in a way a perfect laboratory for urbanism in Africa, and that's why we selected this place. So what we hope to do in this lab is, like I said, create a safe space for supporting urban management objectives, skills and training, and all sorts of research ideas that come from this world. We closely aligned with our precinct plans, and I'm sure you also will have your precinct plans in the back of your pocket. But we co-created this plan with the CID, with the city, etc. And this particular plan asks of us to do these kinds of things in it. So we're completely aligned up and down and across with our strategic objectives as well as our boots on the ground stuff. And with that, we could probably go into a bit more detail with each of you in future sessions. But in long and short, our digital strategy of why we want to create a twin is to build this lab to test 4IR, circular economy and smartness through skills and development of people, which is super important because without smart people, you can't get smart city. And this is a fundamental issue for us. It's not the technology holding us back, it's the 4IR soft skills that are holding us back. And so we're upskilling inside the university to learn how to do this as a massive asset owner, but also external to ourselves. We are skilling others up as we go along. What it means is we take a lot of data, whatever we can get our hands on, whatever it is that we're working on, whatever the problem is, and we feed these into a platform or platforms, depends on what we're working on, to build lots of real-time instruments to ask questions. And I'll show you one of the examples as we go along. And we hope that these questions and challenges can then serve our citizens, business environment, or government or ecosystemic issues that we care about. We do this in collaboration with students, which is super important. And these students come from all sorts of disciplines, Not just because it doesn't help if we are experts learning in silos. We need to make sure people learn how to do work like this at scale in the cities of Africa. And so together we are building our smart campus as a test lab and living labs with our buildings as we represent an asset owner. And the same will scale into the CID as we go into the neighborhood scales of making smartness in Africa. So I'm showing you this so that you understand that the digital infrastructure is one part. It's a technical part. Last year we were here, if you like my awesome drawing here, and now we are here because we are working in a collaborative way from the same space. As students are doing basic things for digitizing the assets and infrastructure or whatever it is that we're busy with, they're learning the basic skills. They learn how to work together. They learn to work at these scales. They learn how to engage with partners and stakeholders. And the stakeholders learn how to work back in a feedback loop with new ideas. And slowly we're learning for ourselves, for example, how to make smart watering across our massive portfolio. And we are learning together in shared classrooms, which is important because a lot of people only learn how to do this in expert environments, not as beginners. And we think we need to shift that culture. So training is a massive part of how to make future cities of Africa, especially leveraging the digital space. And then we encourage people to participate as much as possible in doing the digital technical work. But the most important work, which I'm going to get to now, these are like building levels and city level things, or sim city information modeling. The most important work is, this is dummy data, it's not complete, is to understand how to make better decisions about the city. So what we are hoping to achieve for ourselves and for others like you is to understand what is the portfolio of problems and challenges that a smart city ought to solve for you, and how can you test and pilot these ideas? For example, these are classic things that the city CID requires, as example, safety and energy and performance or desirability issues across their portfolio. This is not complete. This is just dummy data to show the potential that we could be unlocking. But as an asset owner, we have massive performance issues. It's like SDG goals, water, energy, carbon, you name it. And if we can't manage our portfolio unless we do it digitally and unless we do it collaboratively, unless we practice. So for ourselves as the UP University, we are also practicing how are we going to get to our targets in a digital twin manner, and how do we learn how to do that together. Obviously, in the private sector, there's a similar questions, similar issues, similar performance targets, portfolio management, cities at scale, and buildings in various locations. So as we go through these examples, we also have to understand information management is a huge deal for this. And we've built private service and information management hubs to allow us to do this off-grid, not just on-grid. So there's a lot of technology options that we could explore depending on the context that you're working in. And long story short, we are building and constructing our Hatfield Digital Campus as a living twin. This is a prototype that we are practicing on right now, which will allow us to plan, design, build, and operate our city and practice together for the long term. And right now we're at this kind of level. We've built most of our infrastructure at a manageable scale, and we will be putting on extra information and smartness as we go along. The scale of this is infinite. Last year we were 10 people, our entire department and our whole faculty is coming online to participate in digital twinning in urban issues, whether it's from operations to construction to design or asset management. It's agnostic to your discipline. And as we go along, we're able to really scale participation and collaboration skills, which is most important in this world. Okay, so that's the technical side, how to do the thing. But what I want to show you is why to do the thing and how to learn how to work together. So I'm going to shift from the lab to the strategy studio. And from these strategy studios, I've got two products to show you, which we developed this year. The one is the Hatfield Solid Waste Twin with the University of Twente in the Netherlands. And the other one is the Urban Mining for Circularity and the Zero Waste Pilot. So Urban Strategy Studio is an environment that looks like this, where we bring in all sorts of disciplines to ask a question with the CID about issues that matter in the CID. And we practice how to develop shared realities, develop urban skills, make challenges tangible, and what kinds of strategies will make the CID better at what tempos. So, for example, students and participants are all involved in the same space. This is not just a student space, it's everybody. And we learn how to think in creative new ways and take action on these complex ideas. So for example, how to shift from a linear economy to a circular economy with our communities, or how to make sure that we reach what we are saying we should be doing and have simple, achievable, measurable outcomes in our CID. It's not just the assets, but it's also all the spaces in between the buildings and all the cultures that we are busy with. So I'm going to show you three outcomes of this year's Urban Strategy Studio. The first one is we studied waste as a theme, as a big theme, and we had three sub-themes in waste. One was solid waste, which you see on the left. Middle one is construction waste, and the far right was bio-waste of the city and the CID. And I'll show you the outcomes of solid waste, which is the Hatfield Solid Waste Digital Twin. The outcomes of construction waste, which is the Urban Mining for Circularity Research Unit. And the outcome for the bio-waste, or was the Hatfield Zero Waste Precinct project, which is still active and ongoing with the partners involved. So let's look at the Hatfield Solid Waste Twin. Basically, in Urban Strategy Studio, everybody, including the CID, including the students, including all the stakeholders, get together and ask questions about the theme or the topic at hand or the challenge they work on. And then they start developing data sets and strategies and questions, and they analyze all this work together to figure out what is the right thing to do and what to do it for. These are just samples of the outcomes of that studio. And a long story short is then they figure out as a community, how are we going to work together and for what purpose and what goal, and what can we do together that will get us there fast, quick, and effectively. For example, in solid waste, we mapped in 2 days, in 25 square kilometers, all of the solid waste landscape of this entire area. It only took 15 students to do it. We did it digitally. And as a result, we were able to, in parallel, build a digital waste solid waste twin pilot, in other words, Uber the waste system to make it more effective. So over 4,000 buildings and 1,000 containers were mapped in just 2 days. And with our partners in University of Pretoria, we started solving the problem of how to make waste management more effective in this precinct. But there was one little trick, is we needed more data. So we were able, for example, we needed to know more about our buildings and assets to enable us to calculate the right amount of waste distribution and outcomes, and so all the math. So we put, for example, first years to work to go and do building stock mapping across this precinct. So it's both a learning opportunity, a skills development opportunity, but also a collaborative work environment. So long story short, 3 hours later, we had our building stock mapped, and together we built this waste twin. So I'll show you an example of how this looks like. So there's the students in South Africa at the bottom and the students in Holland at the top. And this simulation that you see in front of you is showing us how containers could be picked up when they are full. In other words, not just every Tuesday, but as needed, when effective, and when it's necessary. And as this simulation goes around, I'm going to skip forward a bit. You can in real time see how much kilograms of waste costs and order of collection is most important and what is most effective to do for that day or whatever interval you're working on. So as a result of these things, instantaneously, you have a comprehensive view of, for example, your CO2 emissions, your kilograms of waste, your distribution, or which buildings might have difficulties, which asset owners might need more help, where crews are, whatever question comes to mind that is an operational or strategic goal. And these kinds of things is what we find very interesting to continue developing. This whole project took about 2-3 months with the collaboration of Urban Strategy Studio and University of Pretoria. And we hope to continue developing on this kind of thing. Waste is a theme, but you can imagine there's quite a number of other themes and outcomes from this. For example, the CID manages the core of this precinct. And from this image in front of you, you can see that there's everywhere that there's not CID, the littering is very high. Everywhere that there's not CID, crime is very high. So this is very useful practice for the CID itself to honor its objectives and goals and trajectories and provide its ROI for its investors and partners along the line, and prove that their money is well spent and their money is going to places that matter, and maybe help them expand their borders and territories and governance structures as they move along. This is a very simple example, but a very powerful one, I believe. So I'm going to skip forward a bit. So the second project that results from Urban Strategy Studio, and I know I have very limited time, so I'm just going to go quickly through it, is the idea of African zero waste cities, which CIDs could be instrumental in achieving. So the other two themes was solid waste was one, but the other theme was bio waste and all of this. And long story short, after this urban strategy studio, challenges were unpacked, and the students discovered that with 5 tons a day of food waste, we can achieve 20%, we can generate 20% of our university's electricity per year. And this is quite a significant number. Yes, there's more we need to figure out. So we engage with the city, we engage with the CID, we're engaging with all the stakeholders to figure out what would it take to produce 5 tons a day of food waste so that we can produce 20% of our electricity locally. And these kinds of things come from Urban Strategy Studio, which we can take further into the real world, which we are now slowly piloting and asking questions about with our stakeholders, contractors, city managers, and everything else in the space to see how are we going to make something really, really useful and better in this 25 square kilometers that we are responsible for. This third project I want to show you is also from the Urban Strategy Studio, which resulted in the idea of how are we've got this incredible material asset bank. And the idea is that if we are to stop mining from source, but we start mining from our cities, how can we redistribute materials and assets through our cities? How can we urban mine instead of going from natural resources to go straight from the city itself and redistribute construction waste or anything else along those lines? So long story short, if we had X amount of construction potential, in other words, we only have 200 cubes of concrete bricks or 3 bricks, a beer can, and 3 sticks. What can we build? What should we build? How do we distribute these resources in an intelligent way? In other words, a smart way. And how can we do this locally so that we reduce our carbon footprints, but also our other issues? So the students in Urban Strategy Studio, along with the stakeholders, would uncover these issues and challenges together and come up with solutions to make our city circular. And this is very powerful, but it's a more mature concept. So we'll take this concept further into research. And as we develop strategies and build our digital inventories about these questions, we can now say, how can we use this a way of working to improve triple bottom line issues in our cities? We know there's lots of problems with the material reality of what cities do and produce. We are the most evil thing on this planet in terms of material waste. Whether it's organic or non. And we are also missing out on massive lessons in informality about reusing, repurposing, recycling, and circulating materials well. And we said if the formal sector were to learn lessons from this environment and start applying it in our markets and commercial spaces, how much more effective could our cities become in Africa? So we take this question forward and say, can we create material passports, material banks, material libraries that we can start trading in and start circulating through our market economy or informal economy or whatever else we are doing? So we take this question to research, and this is where we are focusing on right now for the current year in my little research unit. And we say, how can we use the digital world to facilitate the physical world of the circular built environment? For example, we are using the assets of the University of Pretoria. We're deconstructing these buildings as transdisciplinary teams, building digital passports, digital libraries, digital banks of every single thing on this building, from the nut to the bolt. And we're deconstructing it to understand how could we circulate this material bank into the right places of our economy without sending everything to landfill, which is the current practice in the entire world, actually. So this is what we do as an outcome of urban strategy with the CID, with the University of Pretoria, and the students in a built environment together. So what I'm asking you today is, and I think I'm at the end of my 15 minutes, which was quite a lot, but what I'm asking you today is, if you're in a city improving district, or insert synonym X, an environment where you need to do something to improve the urban habitat, what could you do? We've learned a lot from the Netherlands. We were there in June, July to ask them questions about how we should be building digital twins in Africa. And there was a very interesting experience. I don't have time to share all of that today. But what we did discover is that it's a complex Rubik's Cube. We can't just, it's not one problem solves all. There's no silver bullet, but there's a pattern of behavior that we can shift to get where we want to be. And if we use these kinds of ways of working, if we build these shared realities, if we figure it out together, if we can do this in 2 ways, and building digital twins in your local environment, your CID, your asset portfolio, your neighborhood, whatever you're doing, makes 2 things very quickly possible for you. It helps you to front end all of this complexity of urbanism with your stakeholders, because these problems are so complex and so difficult to understand. If you all have different perspectives about it, it's very hard to bring a negotiation and decisions to the table. But if you work in this way with digital twins and urban strategy, you can front end this complexity, make it simple to understand this complex world, and get consensus much earlier. And the other thing you can start practicing, because it's a long-term journey, is to optimize or predict very specific urban challenges, whether this is from energy or operations or whatever you're busy with. So the idea is that if you work in this way, you can help with a discovery and joint understanding of what your problem is and how you as a community fixes it together. And it helps you to create a better place for common ground and facilitating better decisions and solutions and decisions to be made. Classic problems that you might think about today, but also as you go through into your work, it's typically problems like, how do we shift from A to B? How do we shift from high crime to low crime, from carbon car to electric cars? Something, an urban transition problem that you might want to work on. The other kind of problem is something that's a very well understood technical operational thing. How do we optimize the water use of our district or across my asset portfolio? Something like that. Or the other kind of problem is, how do I mitigate a risk, a vulnerability, a burden, or something like that? These are the 3 kinds of problems that work really well with this environment. As you can imagine, for CIDs and national twinning and urban strategy, there's a scale to think about. There's things you want to solve by the minute and the hour, but there's also things you might want to solve across many years or cycles of time. So real time for us is relative to these scales and time frames. And there's real time inside building all the way to the human level as well, all the way to the macro scale. And in all of these places, there's room for CIDs to participate and activate good ideas and activate communities to work together. So for us, we're going to be figuring out with our stakeholders. Right now, we're working on the air quality pilot. It's a long-term idea. When we're practicing in Hatfield, that will launch very soon. We're going to continue figuring out the solid waste ideas, what we should be doing with our CID in the city of Tshwane, and how are we going to do our 5 tons a day food waste so that we can figure out how to optimize energy and reduce all of that. And can we maximize on our urban material bank? And what does that mean? And how can we work with that with our local and extended economies? So I'm giving you this super fast, super high level thing just to give you an idea of, I want to actually put the challenge to you. City improvement districts, where can you tap in? Where could you fit in? What would you like to practice in? What would you like to come and explore? Because we're open to discuss all of these ideas, and this is the kind of way that we work. So I'm going to stop my share, and then you will be done for the moment.